The Galactic Historical Council chamber buzzed with tension as dozens of species gathered around the holographic display. At its center floated a perfect three-dimensional recreation of humanity's first interstellar vessel, the Wanderer, the ship that had changed everything. Ambassador Thexlar of the Vryn Collective gestured with three of his tentacles toward the image. Clearly, the propulsion matrix bears the signature of Vryn engineering. We provided the humans with the theoretical framework for faster-than-light travel in 2247. Preposterous, clicked High Scholar Mirathos, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns across the walls. The Silicate Concordat shared our quantum field equations with Earth scientists decades before your people even made contact. The mathematical foundation is ours. Captain Sarah Chen sat quietly in the human delegation seat, watching the argument unfold with barely concealed amusement. Her weathered hands rested on the armrests, calloused fingers tapping a silent rhythm against the metal. At 73, she had seen enough political theater to last several lifetimes. The debate had raged for 3 standard hours. Each species presented their case with the solemnity of a religious ceremony. The Korthans claimed the hull design mimicked their bioorganic ship architecture. The Zephites insisted the navigation systems were adapted from their stellar cartography. Even the normally peaceful Luminar had entered the fray, arguing that the ship's life support systems were clearly derived from their atmospheric processors. What none of them seemed to notice was that Sarah hadn't said a word. Ambassador Vector, the Gathonian representative whose species prided themselves on mediating disputes, finally turned to her. His 6 eyes blinked in sequence as he spoke in his species' melodic language, translated instantly by the chamber's systems. Ambassador Chen, humanity has been remarkably silent during this discussion. Surely you must have insight into which of our esteemed colleagues provided the crucial technology that enabled your species' first step into the greater galaxy. Sarah leaned forward slowly, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. The chamber fell silent. Dozens of alien eyes, sensors, and perception organs focusing on the elderly human. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph, its edges soft from decades of handling. You want to know who designed the Wanderer? She held up the photograph for the chamber's scanners to capture and project. The holographic display shifted, showing a faded image of a much younger Sarah standing in a cluttered garage workshop. Beside her stood a grizzled man in oil-stained coveralls, his arm around a teenage boy who was grinning while holding up a complex circuit board. "That's my grandfather, Marcus Chen," Sarah said, pointing to the older man in the photograph. "And that's my cousin David. This picture was taken in 2241, 6 years before first contact with any of you. Grandpa Marcus was a mechanical engineer who worked on experimental aircraft. David was a computer science prodigy who dropped out of MIT because, and I quote, they weren't thinking big enough." The chamber remained silent, confusion rippling through the assembled delegates. Sarah stood, her voice growing stronger. The Wanderer wasn't designed in some government laboratory or prestigious research facility. It was designed in my family's garage in Colorado over the course of 12 years. Started as a joke, actually. Grandpa Marcus bet David that they couldn't build a working fusion reactor small enough to fit in the workshop. David took that bet seriously. She walked toward the holographic display, her shadow falling across the image of the Wanderer. By the time the Vryn made contact and shared their FTL theories, we'd already solved 70% of the engineering problems independently. Your equations just confirmed what Grandpa Marcus and David had already figured out through trial, error, and more failed prototypes than I can count. "Impossible," whispered Thexlar. "The mathematical complexity alone." "My grandfather had a 6th-grade education," Sarah interrupted. "Taught himself calculus from library books because he wanted to understand how rockets worked. David started coding when he was 7. Neither of them cared about what was supposed to be impossible. They just cared about what could work." She pulled up another image from her personal files, this one showing the Wanderer's prototype engine. "The propulsion system? That's based on Grandpa's sketch from 2243. He called it the Marcus Drive as a joke. We called it that officially until the day he died." She swiped to display technical schematics covered in handwritten notes and coffee stains. "The navigation computer?" David coded the core algorithm on his laptop during a family camping trip. Said the stars gave him inspiration. High Scholar Mirathos's crystalline structure pulsed with agitation. "But surely the refinements, the final design, Were made by a team of human engineers, yes, Sarah acknowledged. But they were building on my family's foundation. When the various alien species offered their technologies, we were gracious. We accepted advice, we incorporated improvements where they made sense. But the Wanderer, her heart, her soul, her basic design, that was human. That was Chen family ingenuity, stubbornness, and the refusal to accept that something couldn't be done. She returned to her seat, carefully placing the photograph back in her pocket. The truth is, we humans have a peculiar trait. We don't wait for permission to reach for the stars. We don't need someone else to give us the answers. We've been dreaming of touching the cosmos since we first looked up at the night sky. My family just happened to be the ones who figured out how to make that dream real. Ambassador Vector's voice was quiet. Why did you never mention this before? In all the years since first contact, humanity never claimed, because we didn't need to, Sarah said simply. The Wanderer flew. She brought us to you. She opened the door to the galaxy. That was enough for Grandpa Marcus. That was enough for David, and it's enough for me. She smiled, though I appreciate finally setting the record straight. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Thexelar's tentacles rippled in what humans had learned to recognize as his species' equivalent of a respectful bow. The galaxy has much to learn from humanity, he said quietly. Sarah's smile widened. And we've got plenty more family projects where that came from.